week we are going on from Beat Street with the Oracle herself. That's right. We are going through to her much smaller role than the Matrix. The 1990 Penny Marshall directed Awakenings as our chain movie of the week. We have also got, finally, we teased about it in the description last week about Kate Blanchett being in Tar, as well as the new Noah Baumbach movie on Netflix titled White Noise. I am your host, George Tarrant, alongside the man, the myth, the talent, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you today?
I am fine and dandy. It's good to be back for the second week this year. I apologize if there's any extra noise for podcast or stream listeners because I have a fan running because it's a bit warm, and I imagine it's a bit warm up your way as well because you're upstairs.
Yeah, I'm upstairs. I'm still working on the laptop at the moment, so apologies for anyone who is watching live and not seeing my delightfully pretty face in true HD. I will be getting myself a camera and microphone system set up again very, very soon. I've been in the middle of doing house renovations, so priorities are as they are. But the content is still the same. The voices in your ears as...
In your heads, very much inside your heads.
We are the voice in your shoulders, warning you which movies to watch and not watch, as just curmudgeonly older gentlemen as we are can do. Now, should we get straight into it and talk about my pick for a chain movie of the week, Awakenings?
Let's do that. So our link here was Mary Alice, if I'm not mistaken, who was in the seminal hip-hop classic Beat Street, famously played the Oracle after the death of the original actress in the sequels of the original Matrix sequels. Don't think she was in the new one, was she?
No, I don't think there was... I can't even remember the character of the Oracle being in there. I think they talked about the Oracle, but I don't think it was actually like an active on-screen presence kind of thing. So
Awakenings, as you said, from 1990, written by Penny Marshall, written by Oliver Sacks, who wrote the book, Stephen Salian, the screenplay, starring the great Robert De Niro and the late great Robin Williams, and a very rare live-action term from Julie Kavner, famously plays Marge Simpson, or voices Marge Simpson. And a few other character names you might recognize in here as well, including John Hurd, famously played
the notoriously terrible father who left Kevin McAllister behind
in Home Alone. The victims of an encephalitis epidemic many years ago have been catatonic ever since, but now a new drug offers the prospect of reviving them. This has a very good rating on IMDb, a 7.8 on here, 74 Metascore. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Writing. It won none of those. I think
who got the Best Actor nod? Was it Robin Williams?
De Niro.
De Niro, okay.
De Niro, Best Actor. I think you'll find probably he was up that year against 91. It was probably Anthony Hopkins for The Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, yeah.
If memory serves, it was a lazy 32 years ago. Tell a lie. It was not. It was Jeremy Irons for Reversal of Fortune. He beat Kevin Costner for Dances with Wolves, Robert De Niro Awakenings, Richard Farris for The Field, and Gerard Depardieu for Cyrano de Bergerac. So we're off topic already. Needless to say, the results for the 1991 Oscar ceremony were more interesting than this film. I didn't
100%.
like it very much at all. I'd always avoided this film on television because it looked boring. There was a particular brand of sort of medical drama that sort of was around at the time. I feel like Vixen regarding Henry, which may actually not be a medical drama, but it's in my head it is.
It's got that kind of emotional, based on the real story kind of sensibility to it that kind of feels a little bit like a Hallmark movie.
A little bit. It was like I referred to it There you go. After being shot, a lawyer loses his memory and must relearn speech and mobility that has a loving family to support him. Written by J.J. Abrams, of all people. That's regarding Henry. It was a medical drama. I called it inspiration porn to Michelle as we were watching it the other day. But she's like, well, wasn't it a very inspiring ending? So we'll go through the plot a little bit here so you know what is going on. We gave you that synopsis there. The victims of the outbreak are catatonic, but now a new drug officer prospect are reviving him. Robin Williams is hired to work in what we feel is a fairly underfunded, underappreciated hospital for, I don't know, the mentally disabled. Once upon a time, it might have been called an asylum. You know, it's people who suffer from schizophrenia, along with through to people who are catatonic and people who have severe mental illness issues. However, he's not well-known for being a practicing doctor, if you will, a person-to-person doctor. He is best known, the most of his work at that point is as a research neurologist. But they seem to be really short of people wanting the job. He wants the job, so almost despite him trying to talk them out of hiring him, he gets hired. And
now that scene itself, and the opening, because we have a kind of a cold opening for this movie where we see these young kids in the 1920s or 30s, I guess, playing in the snow, and one of them like scores his name into something, and it's Leonard. And as the story progresses, we find that is the young child version of Robert De Niro's character, and that is our cold opening for this. It then opens up with Robin Williams going in for essentially a very we need someone so who anyone will do interview, and they're literally stretching to the point of trying to find points where Robin Williams, who seems to be somewhat well versed in his field, to be, or at least suitable on paper, qualified enough to count. They go back to literally his medical school periods and just say, "Oh, you took someone's temperature, right? That's enough for him to get this job." So this position that he's going for is very much a caretaker role, essentially.
You are correct. And it seems like his lack of experience really isn't a determining factor. He sees a warm body, basically, with a white coat. He really starts to take an interest in these catatonic patients. I think the first one he really starts to take an interest in is a new patient named Lucy, who he tries to figure out what's going on with her and he starts to really explore, I guess, the boundaries of their catatonia, if that's actually the right word. And he realizes that they aren't just statues. He throws a ball at them, they will catch them. And he starts to try and explain this to his colleagues, but they are unimpressed by his, and basically they're almost the Greek chorus, they don't pay attention, like who cares about these people? Just come in, do your job, go home. But Julie Kavner's Eleanor Costello, who is this, I guess, a nurse is assisting him, she believes in him. And this leads him to seeking out a drug after seeing a presentation that it would help Parkinson's patients, I think it was. And lo and behold, when he actually gets permission to apply it to one patient, that patient being Robert De Niro, who's one of the people who is catatonic, it works. It doesn't work forever. No is the answer. It does not work forever. It is
not a miracle drug.
For a little while, it almost feels like when he manages to wake up everybody using this drug. It almost feels like that. The Twilight Zone movie, the Steven Spielberg segment, everyone plays kick the can. All the old people play kick the can down the road. It almost feels like that. It's like they're out and about and they're partying and they're having a good time for the first time in forever. And this is supposed to be the feel-good moment of the film. Before the downside of Robert De Niro being the first patient to get the drug, he's the first one to then start to slide back into catatonia, and that's where they end up at the end of the film. And you know what? At the end of the film, I really just didn't care.
There was in spite of the message and design of this movie being the true awakening of treating them as human beings and trying to engage them and communicate with them in a way that they understand, which is inherently a very good message to have, regardless of whether you're a doctor or whatever. Communication and understanding, they take you a long way in this life. There was a strange, constant feeling of emotional dissonance, and there were a lot of things that they were trying to elicit emotional response from me as the audience that just didn't work or came off as entirely cliched or cringeworthy. And the injection of the romantic element between Malcolm Sayer and Eleanor Costello, it was like, well, gee, that's a surprise. Don't know, don't care. Nothing's going to happen with that until the very end when he learns the true lesson. And, you don't need my superpower to tell how this movie's going to end. The fact that one of the last things that we see is Dr. Sayer rewatching this video of Leonard and just saying, there was something special about it. It's like, yes, he was your friend. It's like, oh, yes, he finally made a friend. I don't care. You haven't engaged me cerebrally in that whatsoever. And I don't like the fact that that is my takeaway, because the message itself of treating people as a good thing, as how you would want to be treated, is inherently a very good, very close to my heart sentimentality. But this movie just destroyed the pathos and empathy that it wanted to and should have built. And it became, we say it a lot about a lot of movies where they're Oscar baity.
It felt like it, didn't it?
Yeah.
It really felt like it was going for, it felt manipulative for me.
Yeah.
It was trying to elicit a particular reaction for me, but I wasn't, because I didn't care. And I kind of saw what it was doing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you do that to me. This is not to say it's a badly made film. The direction is high competence from someone you would expect to do reasonably good work. The acting is pretty decent, actually. I don't know, it's an Academy Award performance from De Niro. It was probably at the time an interesting thing to see from De Niro, considering he was best known for playing, gangsters probably at this point in time, and badasses and stuff like that. But Robin Williams, this is just not a bad performance from Williams, but this is the kind of performance we kind of expect from him, I guess, a little bit. Like the inspiring, selfless, a dedicated professional. This is the performance we saw in Dead Poets. Or through to something like Patch Adams, which is significantly worse than this film even. But it's kind of what you expect from him when he does his serious roles.
Well, that's it. I mean, this came in 1990, a year after Dead Poets Society, and then he didn't really touch too much on the serious thing until where is it? Let's have a look here. There's Birdcage. There was Jack, which strangely had a similar kind of feel. Hamlet in 96.
He only had a very small role.
Good Will Hunting in 97.
Yeah.
This very much kind of feels like a prototype run or a rehearsal run for what got distilled into the phenomenal performance of Good Will Hunting.
I mean, that's not to say I dislike I just expected him at some point to tell the patients to stand on their tables and say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." I don't know. It was interesting, I guess, maybe at the time to see someone so famous for transforming themselves so effectively in the comedy roles that they're pulling it out of the bag so brilliantly in these dramatic roles. But I don't know. It just felt like nothing I hadn't seen from Williams before. And this is with 30 years of obviously, hindsight, and we know what came after this. But even by 1990 standards, it was. Didn't we see this a couple of years ago in that movie about poetry? And they inserted a very quiet, almost Rocky-esque, romance angle between him and Julie Kavner's character, Eleanor. They hinted early in the film, and then they come back to it at the end of the film. But you're like, oh, guys, no. That was. We weren't convinced earlier, and I was kind of glad you skipped it. To come back to it as like somehow, was this his reward for doing good works as he gets to be with Eleanor at the end?
Yeah.
It was demeaning, and I think Julie Kavner has made the right choice in sticking to voice acting.
I don't think she was necessarily bad. I don't think any of the performances were necessarily bad, but there was just no heart and soul in it. Like the fact that Dr. Sayer is socially uncomfortable as our leading man, as our entry into this character, as the character that we, the audience, are going to follow. That's not an easy start. There's not a good place to put the audience in because you just feel awkward and you feel uncomfortable, which, yes, that's what he felt. But at the same time, we want to have engagement with him. And having Robin Williams there, one of the most likable, magnetic personalities to ever be put on cinema, that casting-wise makes a lot of sense. But then when you don't give him the scenes or the level that is needed to really engage with him, it feels disingenuous and boring. And then when you layer in all these other things, it's like, yeah, it's a miracle. They're all up and running and working and it's great. It's like, cool. Again, you still didn't really feel that elation and excitement because you fucking knew that was gonna goddamn well happen. And then the despondency and the sadness by the end, again, you knew that it was coming. They telegraphed every single one of these emotional punches so much that when it lands, you don't fucking care.
I guess
that's its biggest problem.
Well, now I'm thinking about it. Did the film really earn that heart punch of a moment where, my God, he's up and around and walking? Like, it did. What did they actually do that was so magnificent? He went to a conference, heard about a drug, thought, that might be applicable to other patients other than the ones it's been strictly designed for, got approval, gave it to one of his patients, and it worked. Like, maybe we should be making the film about the drug company who fucking came up with the thing. Like,
follow Peter Stormare's character.
The guy in the urinal who told him, piss off, I'm just a chemist, I just think, the guy in the urinal probably wouldn't have been a particularly sellable title, but maybe that's why I failed to feel a connection here, in the sense that there wasn't, other than taking an interest in his patients, which is being sold as some amazing, it is a step up from what they had in this hospital. Isn't that just the fucking bare minimum?
Yeah.
Like,
you'd certainly hope that it is.
I mean, obviously, in the real world, that's not necessarily true.
Everyone knows about the NHS.
Well, they're not going well right now, and I'd love to say Medicare in Australia is doing better. And it is, but just
comparatively, but still, it's like saying, look at this. This room is only partially on fire.
This is just some singe damage, yeah. But I'm sure we've all seen doctors who didn't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
We've all probably had an encounter with a crappy health professional where you're like, that person, seriously, they've got, their job is to help people. I recall an old friend of a show, Trudy, once upon a time had to go get intravenous IV of antibiotics because she had a terrible infection. And they basically chonked it on so fast. I don't know how they do. I'm not a medical professional. You might have picked that by now. It basically made her throw up. It made her ill.
Shit.
And the nurse just basically watched an actual friend of the show, Patria, grab one of her sick bags and give it to her, then just walked away. Then never came back. So,
that's your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen.
We're not one of these horrible professionals, but shouldn't our standards be a little higher to go, this guy, he's doing the bare minimum, which is the doctor is to pay attention to what's going on with his patients and see if he can help them. Wow, what a hero! Next week, the policeman who catches criminals in his spare time. What the fuck?
It is the perfect line from Batman versus Superman, where Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White just says, crime increases in Gotham. Also, water is wet. Yeah.
I don't know what's more disturbing, Awakenings or the fact that you remember a line from that film.
Hey, that movie has got some good things. It's got a lot of problems, but it's still got some good things.
Actually, I think I remember a line as well. Shit.
Ha!
There's that great line where he goes, if he's our enemy, it's 1% chance he's our enemy, we have to treat that as 100% certainty. I remember that line. That was good. Anyway,
Zack Snyder can occasionally write a line.
Sorry?
Zack Snyder can occasionally write a line.
Right. I don't think he wrote it, though. That's probably for the best. So maybe that's why I failed to connect with the characters. It's just a character who's essentially doing his job at a moderately competent level and basically organize a drug trial inside his hospital. And in fairness, he did push hard for that to happen. So, a bit above and beyond there, in a sense, trying to get once it actually worked, though, he was able to get further funding. It's just, I just didn't feel what was so extraordinary about this film. And the fact that they did the drug trial, it didn't fucking work in the end. Yeah, I mean, it woke him up for a while. There was a cartoon when I was a kid. And I was trying to remember the name of it. It was like Ulysses 31 or something like that. It was one of those Japanese cartoons where the entire crew was frozen or something, and only one or two of them were able to stay away. Ulysses 31 is what IMDb tells me it's called. Anyway, it made me of that because in that cartoon, the entire crew is like frozen, and it's up to the captain to try and get them home for reasons. It's been a very long time since I saw it. But there was like one or two episodes where for some magical reason, the crew would be alive again and able to do things. And it was actually, you felt like oh, wow, we're back. Yay. Moment in the show. But then by the end of the episode, they were back into being frozen again anyway. That's kind of what this, and that's a super deep cut. You're going to have to really look hard for anybody who remembers that TV show. But that's what it reminded me of. It was like, okay, they're awake for a while and they're asleep again. Like,
yeah, there's
nothing happened of note in this film.
No, nothing. And I feel like, at the beginning of the movie, they say based on true story. And then at the end, they have that quintessential thing of how, everyone went back to sleep and they were occasionally able to wake up, have more awakenings, and Dr. Sayer is still practicing in the Bronx. Like, okay. So, the way that they try and hang this, that's where that sense of, we're doing this because this is a paint-by-numbers success at the box office. We've got Robin Williams. We've got Robert De Niro. It's got a romance angle. It's got hope of humankind. It's got doctors being good doctors. It ticks a lot of boxes, but it's sterile.
I think that's a good way of putting it. I think you nailed it with your first statement. This is like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
And that in a good way. I should just note, in case anyone is so inspired by our review today that they want to go out and watch it, you might try and avoid some of the issues that I had whilst trying to find a copy. Just note this is Awakenings, not from 1990. It is not Sexual Awakenings from 2002.
How did I know you were going to do that?
A woman wishes the model nude for a men's magazine. The only problem is her husband is against the whole idea. I found myself very confused halfway through this. Where's Robert De Niro? And why does Robin Williams have a problem with his wife posing nude? And, why is he calling himself Chris Evans? It is also not Carnal Awakenings from 2013. A young couple becomes involved with a sexy new stranger in a steamy adult thriller. Again,
we could say that we have exhausted our conversation on Awakenings for this week with that terrible
Either
joke.
one of those has a more interesting plot line than this film.
That is beyond the case. But you have the keys to the kingdom, sir. Where are you leading us? Who is our chain? Where are we going? Are we going to follow? I hope that you're going to follow Penelope Ann Miller to the classic Kindergarten Cop.
No, unfortunately, I didn't notice that one. I could have followed Alice Drummond, who, of course, plays the scared librarian at the start of Ghostbusters. No. But no. We mentioned him earlier. We're going to follow John Hurd. He of Kevin McAllister fame. And hopefully we're going to a more interesting film than Awakenings, because I've never actually seen this film. And before doing my research about where to go next, I'd never heard of this film. This is the 1985 film After Hours, directed by a bloke you might have heard of called Martin Scorsese.
I have not heard of this movie.
An ordinary word processor has the worst night of his life after he agrees to visit a girl in Soho he met that evening in a coffee shop. After Hours, it can be rented from your Apples, your YouTubes, your Microsofts, and that kind of thing, if that's kind of jam.
Okay.
Stars Griffin Dunn, who might be a face a few of you are familiar. I think last year I talked about I Love Dick, which he was in. He's in a whole bunch of other things as well.
Yeah. Okay.
We also have one of the Arquettes, Cheech and or Chong, Linda Fiorentino, John Hurd, of course. Catherine O'Hara pops up in here, as does the great Bronson Pinchot.
Okay. This, for those playing along at home, is available to rent on Apple TV, Amazon, and Facebook. So
hopefully this one holds up. We haven't seen a Scorsese film for a while. I think we've used him as a previous link when we did the Robert De Niro film, The Greatest Showman, or whatever it was. Great comedian. But you never won. Joker was based on it.
Chain movies. Here we go. It was one of King of Comedy.
King of Comedy. I think that was Scorsese with our link in and out of that one. I could be wrong.
No, it was Robert De Niro, because we went from Angel Heart to King of Comedy.
And I don't know where we went after that. Did we?
Hudson Hawk.
Hudson Hawk. Yes. That's a terrible film.
I have also, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good little tag for anyone who's using Letterboxd. You can follow The Fried Brain on Letterboxd, and I have made a list. It's an ongoing list of our chain movies. It's got every single one, and I'm going through slowly but surely and putting who the link is from one to the other. And we are officially, after Awakenings, on 100. But the first three are not legitimate links in the way that everything was. The first movie
trying to change it up
Streets
a little bit, didn't we?
We had Streets of Fire, then we had the Philadelphia Experiment, followed by Final Countdown, and then we went from Tom Cruise in Top Gun to Legend, Angel Heart, and then the aforementioned King of Comedy.
That was a long time ago. Jesus.
It was. Yeah, we've got some of the movies that we have gone to is like, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Like we did Under Siege. We've done Layer Cake. Don't remember that.
I don't remember Layer Cake. If someone said to me, "Have you seen Layer Cake?" I'd be like, "No."
We've done Code 46, The Discovery, Go, Titan AE. Of course, one of the best movies on the list is Spice World. You fucker.
Let's not forget Death Machine.
Wake in Fright, Clue, The Pawnbroker more recently. We've had one hell of a interesting collection there. I will say, one of the things that is more generally not being used as a genre for a chain movie at the moment, comedy. We're generally going for more serious or scary or brutal, visceral kind of movies.
I have to say, it's probably I might be guilty of that, as I'm very, very fussy about comedy. I find 95% of film comedies not funny at all. Hopefully, we're going to talk about this in a future week. But I saw The Banshees of Inisherin this week past.
Oh, I want to see that.
Just in case anybody is thinking about this film and going, like, their first review on IMDb said, shoulder-shudderingly funny. I didn't laugh once. This is not a funny movie. Maybe there's a particular Irish sense of humor I didn't get, but it's not a comedy. That's not to say it's a bad film. We will, in keeping with our new policy, we'll try and facilitate once George has had a chance to see it. We can come back together and we can have a chat about it for the show. But I'm just going to give you that warning up front. If anyone tries to tell you it's a comedy, it's not.
Alrighty. Well,
so I'm very fussy about comedies. Someone recently tried to help me watch You Don't Mess with Zohan. I made it 13 minutes into the film.
Yeah. Adam Sandler has not made a successful comedy movie in a long time for me.
Quiet taste, and I don't have it. But should we now move on to something we have both seen?
Yes.
That being the new film from Noah Baumbach.
Yes. White Noise, ladies and gentlemen. Now, speaking of genres, what the hell genre do you put this movie in?
Comedy, drama, horror, IMDb says.
That's fair.
And I don't know if there's a tag for fucking weird, but that would be my suggestion if I were in charge of things, but it probably doesn't have that. This, as we said, was directed by Noah Baumbach, who will be directing Barbie. Was he directing or did he write Barbie? I can't remember.
He wrote Barbie. Greta Gerwig, who stars in White Noise, is directing.
He's the director of Barbie, which I cannot wait to see that. Because just watch this film. This is a fucking weird movie. And how do you give the people who made this the keys to Barbie?
Now, if I may, I would like to read the synopsis as per IMDb.
By all means.
So, it dramatizes a contemporary American family's attempt to deal with the mundane conflicts of everyday life while grappling with the universal mysteries of love, death, and the possibility of happiness in an uncertain world.
Yes. Okay. So, written and directed by Noah Baumbach, it's based on a book by a guy called Don DeLillo, who I had never heard of, but through some research, I have found is a bit of an iconic author of, I think, postmodern American literature. My brilliant and beautiful partner, Michelle, who is the owner of most of the interesting looking books behind me, the crappy ones, they're mine. But she, being a writer herself, was familiar with DeLillo's work. Just had never heard of him. I'm surrounded by talented writers. I myself am not one. That said, of the three of us, who is paid to write on a regular basis? Not the inspiring kind, it should be noted. So apparently this book was considered a masterpiece of postmodern literature, considered unfilmable. I would agree with that synopsis. So the stars here, great cast. Adam Driver, Greta Gerwig, Don Cheadle, your three big stars here. Adam Driver plays Jack. Greta Gerwig plays his wife, Babette, and Don Cheadle plays his colleague, Murray. Interesting story, Babette. I think it's the first time I've seen a character in a film called Babette. Funny story. My ex-wife's mother-in-law is named Lynette, When my dad first met her, he thought I told him he didn't remember her name, but he remembered the "et" at the end. So, and he couldn't hear her in a busy, loud restaurant. So he thought her name was Babette.
Well, there you go.
Most of the first day he met her. I did correct him later, but she became lovingly known around the traps as Babs forevermore. Hearing a character called Babette in a film was very amusing to me. They're entirely personal and very irrelevant to this show reasons. And nobody asked for that story, but you're welcome. Jack is a professor at a college. He is the professor of Hitler studies at university at a very sort of generic college, which is supposed to be a joke, I guess. It is Hitler studies, and his wife Babette. They have this big family, lots of kids, and
their fourth marriage.
They're constantly talking, constantly yammering at each other, but they don't seem to be listening to each other. The kids are talking, Babette's talking, Jack's talking. They're all saying different things, having conversations about different things, but none of them are talking. It was very annoying.
That's very Noah Baumbach. When you look at all the stuff, because he's previously done a lot of work with Wes Anderson, where it's oddball, unusual speech cadence with characters and things like that, and just odd, sort of like whimsical flights of fancy that they'll just happily go off of, and no one's paying any attention. But if you choose to listen to here, God, what's the name of that director that used to kind of mic up everyone on set?
Oh God,
it was like
Michael Apted?
Possibly. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
he the guy who did Gosford Park.
Yeah, and there's kind of that sort of sensibility to the way
Robert Altman.
Yes, thank you, Robert Altman. It's a little bit like that, but in a sort of like
artsy-fartsy kind of way.
Yes, it feels like an art house movie.
So Noah Baumbach's previous work includes being the writer of Marriage Story, The Squid and the Whale, Frances Ha, which is a good film, Fantastic Mr. Fox, The Life Aquatic of Steve Zissou, and Margot at the Wedding. So these are the kind of, and Madagascar 3, the kind of films your hipster friend really enjoys, despite the fact he probably can't explain why. He or she can't explain why.
You don't need to explain it. It's an emotion. It's an emotional thing. Just stop me.
So they have this busy life. And we see him meeting his colleagues at the university, having very similar kind of separate, disparate conversations at the college with colleagues like Don Cheadle. I guess the main sort of interest in the film starts when there's a train crash outside of town, and there is a airborne toxic event. There is a cloud of deadly chemicals floating over the town that they live in, and they are forced to escape.
It's a feathery cloud. It's a pluming cloud. It's a toxic event.
And they have to try and escape town to get away from it, and they end up in a refugee camp, and then they come back. I don't know what this film's about. I don't get it. Like, it's set in the 80s, and it looks really good. I think they're trying to say something about consumerism, especially when they visit the supermarket so often, and the supermarket's kind of treated like a really warm, homely, safe space for them to be in. And I'm like, okay. And all the brands are very bright and
hey, the supermarket is where you go with the whole family to hang out as well as socialize with your friends as you shop for products you need.
Very good. Was that from the film?
No.
It sounds like something someone in the film would say.
I'm copywriting that.
Scenes in The Hurt Locker when Jeremy Renner's character is back in the States and he's overwhelmed by the choice in the supermarket. It felt a little bit like that, but more stylized. But I really get what the fuck they were getting at. The constant yammering conversations at each other were infuriating. The refusal to land on a plot that was going to drive a story forward. It was infuriating because there's no fucking plot to this film. Stuff just happens.
That is the plot, my friend. That is the plot. And I think its message, I'm probably stretching here, but I think the message of the movie is life just happens and you need to pay attention because it moves too fast for you to settle on it. I think.
What was with the fucking toxic cloud? Like, I mean,
something happened. It was a unifying moment for the rest of the families to come together, and they didn't because still no one was willing to listen to each other. Communication, ladies and gentlemen.
That's about as close as anybody's got to giving me an idea of what this plot was about. The film was about, and they could have been done a lot better. Like there were moments where you kind of thought it was going to take an interesting direction, where they got in a car and they were driving away from the airborne toxic event. Mm-hmm. And they stopped for gas in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of scary and spooky, and there's weird lightning clouds, and and
but then the comedy spin on that is like, oh, there's something in the clouds. That was excellent. We talked about it last week about trolling your audience. That was a great moment where it's like, oh, there's something in the clouds, and it's just the McDonald's sign.
Yes,
that was well done. But it didn't sit and fit with anything else in the movie.
Like, it just kind of was like, you know what it made me think of for a minute? I was thinking, is this going to be like Nope? I don't know if you've seen Nope yet, but
not yet.
I strongly recommend it if you haven't. Speaking of things being in the clouds, in that was, I guess, Jordan Peele's film about spectacle, and you can listen to him talk about that ad nauseum around the place, and he's. If you can listen to Jordan Peele too, the guy's fascinating to listen to. But, you know, quite aside from his points being made about spectacle and that kind of thing in Nope, it's actually pretty entertaining as well, and kind of makes a fairly effective monster film because it has a monster in it. And the monster isn't just the family or society or Adam Driver's, comb over. I mean, like, I was thoroughly, I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I didn't know what I was getting when I watched this. I thought, great cast, interesting director. This could be worth watching. And in the end, I got an artsy-fartsy 80s film. It went for way too long. And
2 hours, 15 minutes. Oh.
It was boring as fuck. Like, I hated this movie. This is one of the worst films. I haven't seen a film this bad. It had such potential for a very long time. You see a film like Death Machine, which I keep coming back to, it's a pile of shit, but they didn't have much to work with.
Now let's talk a little bit about the talent on the screen here, because it seems like there is a rule developing with Adam Driver, and that is he is good when he's downtrodden, when he plays downtrodden, whether that's just naturally like when Harrison Ford is good when he's essentially just playing Harrison Ford, or Sean Connery is good when he just is able to turn any character into Sean Connery. Adam Driver is much better in these sorts of things. Like we talked last week or just before Christmas about his sci-fi movie that's coming out later with the dinosaurs. Anytime Adam Driver goes near a high-profile blockbuster movie, it just looks bad. And at least here, you can see that he's actually making cognitive actor decisions. And they are interesting, like the sequence between him and Don Cheadle almost sparring when they're talking about Hitler and Elvis, and the way that was shot. It was really interesting. It didn't
make any sense.
No, it didn't make any sense at all. But it was interesting. And Don Cheadle, as a performer in this, he makes really interesting choices. And Greta Gerwig makes really interesting choices about her character as well. But none of it manages to connect, which is the biggest fault of the movie. Maybe that's the message. Doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to connect with anyone, so you're alone in this universe.
Well, that's a possibility. Anything's possible with terms of this something this obtuse.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the problem with apparently being very faithful to the
Mm.
novel being postmodern. And I mean, I am not a fan of things postmodern as a rule. I mean,
Mm.
it makes sense because it doesn't make sense. And I'm sure it's deeper than that. And if anybody bothered listening to the show, we'd probably get letters explain to me what postmodernism really is and how I misunderstood it. But this is the second film in a row I've seen, or not second in a row, but second of some recent films I've seen with Adam Driver in it that have an interesting premise, which they take a giant dump on and just throw away. The other one being The Dead Don't Die, the Jim Jarmusch zombie movie from a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Which he was in.
I
He makes some interesting choices. Obviously, Marriage Story really landed for him, so good for him. In the end, he became the best thing about the Star Wars sequels. Not that there was a great deal of competition involved. He was fantastic in The Last Duel. I think he's actually a fantastic actor, Adam Driver. But
Me too.
and I think does what as best he can with the material here. But as you say, it's not necessarily the problem of where they're playing the characters. I'm sure they're playing them how they were told and how they were written. Greta Gerwig is a sensational actor, by the way. I'm a big fan of Greta's. And I think she's a better director than she's an actor, personally. So that's bodes very well for what she's going to do with Barbie. But she's finding this, and her perm is spectacular in this.
It's on point. It's on point.
See, the film looks fantastic. The set design, the art direction is brilliant. It looks really like it feels like the 80s. They've really nailed the vibe. But if they were told to play it like, inconsiderate, disrespectful, non-attentive motor mouse, then good job. They got it right. I think Greta's fantastic. I think she's great in this. I think Don Cheadle is bizarre but fun in this as best he can be. I think I'm more interested. My interest level perked up a little bit when Don Cheadle popped up on the screen. He's a magnetic actor. I think he's great to watch. But I'm going to go back to this film makes no sense. If you love artsy fartsy crap that Noah Baumbach made with Paul Thomas Anderson, then you're going to. Is that the right Anderson? Did I get that right? Wes Anderson. Sorry, my bad. The Life Aquatic, a fantastic Mr. Fox, a squid and a whale, that kind of crap. I'm sorry, They're not my favorite films of all time. Wes Anderson is not like. I feel like he makes films that they look fantastic and they feel like they're very substantial, but in the end have no nutritional value at all. If you like those kind of things, and you're probably going to dig this. And it's on Netflix, so if you've got a Netflix subscription, check it out, I suppose. But my suggestion would be, if you like films with stories, then this is not one. Do you remember a few years ago, David O. Russell?
Slash and kill.
David O. Russell came out and said, I think it was after it's an American Hustle, or one with and he said, I'm not interested in story, I'm interested in character. I'm going to be paraphrasing there, but it was something like that. Yeah. I don't think you can make a film with one but not the other, personally.
Yeah.
I think this is a filmmaker who's interested in characters, not the story. And the story, for me, just wasn't there. It made no sense. It was way too long. And there
was so many interesting elements that they could have spun off an interesting story of a dysfunctional family running for their lives following a cataclysm, or if they had wanted to go into sci-fi or horror, because there are elements where it is genuinely you see something visual on screen, you suddenly go, I'm really interested. What is this? Where the movie turns? Is this where it reveals itself? Like the sequence where Adam wakes up in bed and there's just the figure that kind of just walks suspiciously through to the bathroom and walks back and stuff. It's like, that's creepy, and the face through the blanket and stuff, it looks fucking scary. It's like, yeah, that would scare me, but it never truly leads anywhere or pays off anywhere. The aforementioned lights in the clouds and it being revealed as McDonald's, that whole sequence, the abandoned gas station, it's really interesting. And there is that sense of, they're starting to build at that point, that sense of, don't get out of the car. You're going to get infected in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how yet, but that happens. And then it's sort of like, whatever. Every time Noah and the cast and the story come together in these little moments that just tease something, it hurts twice as much because it never gets paid off, or it never gets revealed or completed.
What did you make of the conclusion?
I kind of strangely liked the conversation they had with the nuns about religion and God and the afterlife and stuff, and that did kind of tie in with the theme of both Greta and Adam's characters being phobically scared of death, and just the illusion of, we don't talk about that here. Shut the fuck up. You want to deal with that? It's here for you if you want it. Otherwise, we don't give a damn. It was a nice balm in a way to the verbal diarrhea that every single character had throughout the whole thing, because it was the first time in the whole movie where it's like, you know what, she's got a point, and she's saying it succinctly, even if she's cutting from English to German. I don't care. She's making a good point. Beyond that, why a musical number at the end, or a dance routine, and again, I feel like it was a little bit of a troll, because we've been trained by Marvel movies now to sit to the end of the movie when there's something on screen, because there'll be a zinger or something. And I was kind of hoping that there would be a last minute punch of even it was all a fucking dream kind of thing, or it cuts to Adam Driver's character being in a hospital bed and he's fucking dying of radiation poisoning, and it was just that fucking fever dream. I'm like, okay, cool. You threw that grenade in really last minute, but okay. But no, it was just a song and dance routine.
I believe that is a song by LCD Sound System, who are, I'm told, or were, a very popular group. Now, I could trip over them on the street and I wouldn't know who they were. You could put $1 million on the table in front of me and say, name one song and it's yours, and I would be out of luck. I would walk out of there just as broke as I am now, because I don't know fucking anything about this band at all. And that's not to say they're bad. Maybe they're great, but that's just not really my genre of music, and maybe slightly after my time when I listened to music, but wasn't 25 years old, which is unfortunately something I'm cursed to do now. So I'm not familiar with them. And then apparently they broke up and reformed specifically, or they reformed where it's specifically a single since they have reformed as a band. And honestly, I don't know if it was a creative decision to go, I think the film would be great to troll the audience with a dance number at the end, or it was just, hey, we've got a song by LCD Sound System and that's a big deal, so let's have the let's make a music video and tack it on to the end of the film. You'd have to think it's the first, not the second. I mean, it would be a very strange choice to do the second, but it almost, like, if you really enjoy LCD Sound System, that's probably a bigger deal for you than, I don't know who they are. So, and I thought the song sucked. So,
I mean, maybe it's the reverse of what James Gunn did with the Peacemaker opening sequence of the dance routine and do you really want to play? His idea was, I want to make an intro that you don't want to skip. And I didn't, because it's a good song and it's fun engagement with the characters. But at the same time, it's also about 45 seconds long versus a long fucking song that is not exactly the most sort of like, oh yeah, upbeat, boom, boom, boom. It's
that's a good point. Do you really give a shit if people hang around during the credits? We put after credit scenes in every film.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I hated this. I hate this a lot. Like, seriously, I could have paid nothing for this, which I almost sort of did. and I still feel ripped off because about 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back. It sucked.
Yeah.
It had very little redeeming quality for me.
Yeah. Totally agree. Whilst there are really enjoyable elements to it, you can say exactly the same thing about the worst cooked cake in the world. It's like, well, sugar I like, and chocolate I like. You've made a fucking turd, but the base ingredients that you used at some point I enjoyed.
But hey, look, you made a delicious cake, but it's got arsenic in it, so I'm just going to have to say no. That's kind of where we're at for this. If you look,
I'm allergic.
You've been to go in for this one. This is a very much an acquired taste. If you like his other stuff, you're probably going to like this. If you go in expecting if you expect laughs, expect horror. I can't think of a group of people that
not really any drama.
No,
not really any action.
It's just a really weird fucking long movie.
Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Should we move on? Yes. Should we talk about Tar?
Tar. From the ridiculous to the sublime. And interesting you're talking about some funny shit with credits. This film also does some very funny shit. Which confused the living shit out of me the first time I watched this. Is that they run the end credits at the start of a film. So there's a good 5 minutes of credits before the film starts. And I'm like, what's going on? Is my copy all fucked up? No, it's just what they did.
You have to watch it with a mirror.
Set in the international world of Western classical music, the film centers on Lydia Tarr, widely considered one of the greatest living composer, conductors, and the very first female director of a major German orchestra. This is written and directed by Todd Field, probably not a name that everyone's going to be familiar with, and worked probably before this was I would have said In the Bedroom, which I think was nominated for an Academy Award. But Little Children, In the Bedroom, both directorial efforts. And you link back to the show, which I know is the most important thing to do here. So he played the pianist, Nick Nightingale, in one of our non-Christmas movies we looked at, Eyes Wide Shut. And interesting. He's an interesting fellow. I read some stories about him, and apparently he became friends with Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise helped coach him through how to deal with Harvey Weinstein when he was trying to get his film In the Bedroom released, and Harvey Weinstein wanted to get in the edit room and fuck it all up. And Tom Cruise sort of had some suggestions about how to deal with that. So good guy, Tom. You don't hear good stories about him very often.
Yeah.
It stars our big star here is Cate Blanchett, the Australian actor. Only other names in here you're going to really, I think, recognize is Mark Strong, plays Alec Kaplan. Alec Baldwin has a cameo. Otherwise, we've got a few other names here. Maybe they're big in Europe. I don't know. I did not heard of Naomi Merlant, Nina Hoss, or Sophie Kaur, but this is the Cate Blanchett show, really.
1,000%.
And there's a reason why she's won everything so far for this performance, and is the red-hot favorite to take home the Best Actress Oscar for this film as well. She is incredible in this film. So the film opens with her being interviewed by the New Yorker, by apparently an actual New Yorker journalist. And this is actually a really interesting way of introducing us to the character and doing a lot of exposition in 5-10 minutes, but doesn't feel like exposition. It's like, hey, Lydia Tarr, tell us about your career and why you're famous. Like it's not sort of awkward conversational style. Like I've been watching The Last of Us, which we're hopefully going to talk about in a future show once George decides if he wants to watch it or not. But it feels a lot like a video game because all the exposition in The Last of Us is done while they're walking down corridors and stuff like that. And Michelle's like,
the load screens.
Yes, loading screens. It's basically how it's like. This is how they do exposition in video games. So, well, it's based on the game. So why wouldn't you do it in the TV show? But this is the way that Tar does it in this interview format is really fascinating. And it actually adds to what I think is one of the film's great strengths is you walk away in this film and you have to get Google out and actually figure out, is Lydia Tarr a real person? Because that's how fucking convincing she is, in Kate Blanchett, that is, and how convincing the film is. You're like, is this about a real person? It almost feels documentary style, at least in the first half of the film. So we meet her. She's this incredibly accomplished composer. She's done everything in the world of classical music, which, most people will not be familiar with what those things are, but we take it from the interview that she's very famous. We cut to her having lunch with Mark Strong, who is a bit sycophantic towards her, and her upcoming performance to do Mahler's Fifth. Then I think we move into one of the more interesting parts of the film where she actually teaches a class at Juilliard and has a massive confrontation with one of the students who's not into listening to Bach because he's a cis white composer and he didn't live, particularly great life, and the kid who plays the student in it is brilliant. One of these, Gen Z kids who, if they don't meet my standards of today, if 400-year-old person lived a completely different set of standards and they should be ignored. And, he's fucking frustrating as all hell. I don't think you found this in your watching. He also speaks very, very quietly.
It was annoyingly so.
Speak the fuck up, kid. I literally had to put the subtitles on to figure out what the hell was going on with some of the things he said. But here you go in one direction. You think this is going to be about cancel culture, and it kind of is, but not the way you expect. We see Lydia move back to Berlin to be with her wife and her child, and to direct the Berlin Philharmonic. I think it's the Philharmonic. I don't know. The orchestra,
which is an incredibly high accolade, shall we say, for this community. It's the first time they've ever had a female conductor in that position, and multiple times the idea of it is brought up as it's the laurels that you can, the highest award that you can be bestowed in the industry.
She's going to be the first conductor to complete the entire sequence of Mahler's symphonies with the same orchestra. That's a really fucking big deal, apparently. So we meet her wife. We start to learn what's going on in their life. And then there's some interesting cuts into the film where we see Lydia being filmed by somebody else with their mobile phone. And they're almost on a FaceTime call, and it's like comments popping up on top of a call. And then we start to see some pretty sketchy business coming up about a former protege of Lydia's, who she doesn't seem very interested in hearing from anymore, but is very interested in speaking to Lydia. And then some very unfortunate things happen to this protege. I'm trying to leave a bit of mystery here because this is a film everybody should see. Now, interestingly, White Noise was 2 hours 16 minutes. This is 2 hours 38, and I know I've said it a million times, but chalk and cheese here, right? 2 hours and 38 here was over, boom. Whereas White Noise, it was like pulling teeth. I just wanted more of this. I'm trying to be mysterious here and sort of to borrow a word from a very wise man. The denouement is delicious.
I try and increase the intelligence of the show one time.
Denouement, the final part of the play, film, or narrative in which the strands of a plot are drawn together and the matters are explained and resolved. We try to raise the tone here. But I loved the denouement of this film because it didn't just end at a certain point, whereas the central drama, which all comes to a head towards the end of the film and resolves what's going to happen with Lydia. But Lydia's story keeps going.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of very interesting ways one can interpret what happened at the end of his film. So maybe, what do you think? Should we go a little spoiler town on this one for a few minutes? And
let's chuck the spoilers up for the next five or so minutes, just to give people an opportunity, considering this is going to be one of the heavy Oscar runner movies. People do like to watch those. we don't want to spoil that. We don't want to take that away from you for
So come back in at about an hour 10, and you'll be back on board.
Yeah.
You've been warned. So for those who have stuck around, the denouement, the central crisis of a film is that Lydia has been having affairs, essentially, with her students. She has been exploiting her position of power and influence over younger students who want an opportunity to play with her orchestras, to engage in sexual relations with them. In a not entirely dissimilar way to what we've seen with the likes of Harvey Weinstein. Or John Lasseter got us in trouble, I think, along the same sorts of lines. Any number of assholes who's been Me Too. Speaking of Me Too, let's not even mention Justin Roiland.
We'll have a conversation about that afterwards. We're talking about tar and spoilers.
And this comes to light through the death of one particular student who commits suicide. And that leads to it coming out about what she's been up to. Her wife finds out about it, and it's a big scandal in the United States. And it leads to her basically being removed from her role at the head of the orchestra. The scene where the orchestra actually ends up playing the fifth with a different conductor, and Lydia
Mark Strong
physically tackling him off the podium was amazing. What I'm but that was all fascinating and really well done. But what I enjoyed about this was her then continuing back to her childhood home, where she sort of discovers some of her old videotapes, and then on from that into working in Southeast Asia. I think it's supposed to be the Philippines, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
And then the final scene of her conducting another orchestra, but this time we cut away from the orchestra playing the music to find the audience is composed entirely of people in, I think, Monster Hunter cosplays.
Yes.
And then you sort of put the pieces together is she's conducting an orchestra who are playing the score for a video game. What did you make of that whole ending?
I liked the fact that the story didn't just end. I liked the fact that the story continued. I liked the way that it was kind of I didn't like the end for one simple reason is it was a low blow for cosplayers and because it just feels like she can't get any work except in this area, and so yes, that is deserved of people who take advantage of their position and are monsters, because let's face it, in many ways she was a fucking monster and she deserved no good things. I feel like having it like that was a bit of an unnecessary knife in the back to a completely different entity of entertainment consumer than what we've got, because everything that we've seen before has been almost like all the characters were almost ripped from the menu as like the elite, the highest of the highs, and there's we're just fantastic, and then suddenly throwing her in with the everyday people, the fact that she's being taken around on a tuk-tuk and she goes on a Kentucky tour and things like that, and it's very, very back to basics. It's like, those look good. I don't like that she's having a good time. I don't want to see her having a good time. I personally feel like it would have been better if it had just been the meeting that they have with her agency, and just like they're talking about collateral damage and kind of rebuilding the brand. I kind of would have liked it if it just ended there.
You wanted a harder ending then?
Yeah.
See, I think it's a couple of. I mean, one of my thoughts about the ending was initially, I think you take away is that this is the lowest of low. This is her plumbing the depths. Hence, you could see it as a stab at people who enjoy video games and cosplayers. But I mean, let's face it, right? I mean, I don't know anything about who would be conducting orchestras in the Philippines, but it's not exactly the zenith of the industry or the classical music world. But initially, I think you're supposed to sort of. Well, my initial takeaway was like, this is all she can get. You know, that's what she look at what she's been reduced to. But when I had to think about it, one could actually spin it in a more positive light, which you were kind of getting at there a little bit, which is we have that meeting with her agency, and they're like, we need to start working on rebuilding the brand. And from there, we cut to Southeast Asia, where she is now working in a very different world or a different angle on the classical music world, where, we've got the very hoity-toity, stuffy, cold world. We see, minimalist world of her working in Berlin in these incredibly sparse and Spartan buildings of polished concrete and cold white, to the warmness and crowded world of Southeast Asia. And one could see that this would just be actually, rather than being her, this is what she's being reduced to. The end is saying this is her first step back to the top, because while the hoity-toities in the classical music world may not think there's really a lot to be done, or isn't it's looking down their nose at video game music, but like, how many people, people do go to concerts for this stuff, right? They have actual huge concerts for composers of music from these games, and these people are huge names in their own right, just in a slightly different way than your Mahlers and your Brahms and your Bachs and your Mozarts, etc. So I liked, in a sense, I can see how you can get that point, is that the ending could be seen as somewhat optimistic for her future. And does she deserve the opportunity to have that future? Probably not, but I liked we didn't get a cut and dried, simplistic, bad ending, and that's it. I like to get an ending where you can look at it a couple of different ways about exactly what the film's trying to say, which she's done. Or not done.
Now, I'm going to take the spoilers off, just so, because we did say that we would only talk for 5 or 6 minutes. The other thing that I found challenging about this movie is it's a compliment and a criticism of Cate Blanchett in this role. She is fucking terrifyingly good, and nobody is able to keep up with her. And a large portion of that, I think, is by design, because Lydia is just so operating on such a different fucking level that people barely know how to communicate to her. It takes 2 women to work as a team to kind of keep up with her, between Francesca and Sharon, her wife, and her personal assistant. And even then, they are shown just with the little looks and expressions and tones that they feel like they're not keeping up. And this is entirely the Cate Blanchett show, which makes it hard to watch, because it's like a little bit like what I said with Robin Williams' character in Awakenings, where he is incredibly socially distanced and he doesn't know how to communicate and deal with other people. Whilst that is very quickly glossed over, in this, it is the laser-focused spotlight thing that we are being driven on, which just makes it very hard. This is not a movie where you can just sit back and let it happen to you. You are studying something so meticulous. This is a piece of clockwork, organization, and skill to balance Mayer's the extravagance of Mayer's compositions. And we are seeing it through just one fucking person. It's really hard. This is not a
but this is not a Friday night at the date movie kind of movie, I would say.
Yeah.
This is a film with
this is an analysis movie.
This film, I found it compelling. I found it very interesting to watch, and I needed to get to the end to find out what was exactly going on, because it kind of plays out a little bit like a thriller later in the film in parts. But you're right in the sense that this is probably not easy watching for a lot of people. And you do need to pay attention. The sound was kind of weird, like I said earlier, not just that guy whispering earlier, but there are a few points where the sound's a bit iffy. At least that's how I found it. I don't know if they're doing a Christopher Nolan here or what. But I think you're right in the sense you definitely want to be paying attention to what's going on in this film, or you might miss something important. But for me, that's why I go to the movies. That's why I watch movies, is because I want that kind of complex, intricate storytelling. And see, I love seeing a great performance, and most people do, I think. And seeing Cate Blanchett in this film is one of the great film roles I think I've ever seen. I remember, I think I've seen a few. I thought to myself, Michelle Yeoh is a lock for Best Actress this year. I don't know. I don't think so now. It's a damn shame, because she's incredible in Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I think the thing that's going to tie it up between those two is accessibility. Everything Everywhere All at Once is more marketable than Tar. And even just looking at it on a pure trailers basis, the trailer for Tar kind of sells it a little bit more as a thriller than it necessarily is. And that can put off an audience. And the highbrow content, or the world that Lydia operates in, classical music conductors, why do I fucking care about that? Oh, a woman works out how to be a fucking badass fighter and things. One of those is just more palatable to the average audience. But
well, fortunately, the average audience aren't actually voting in this. It's the Academy. And you're right. Look, I mean, either actor will be an incredibly deserving winner of the award. Like, we loved Everything Everywhere at Once, and like Ke Huy Quan is a fucking lock. I'm certain he's a lock for Best Supporting Actor. The other guys who are in there did some great work too. But sorry, it's his. I'd suggest it's getting Best Supporting Actress as well. It's got Stephanie Sue and Jamie Lee Curtis, so I think it's Jamie Lee's getting it personally. And look, I don't think it'll get it. I think Spielberg's winning Best Director. I haven't seen The Fabelmans yet, but everybody seems to think it's his for that. Whereas I think the Daniels, if the Daniels could get that, I think the Daniels are going to get Best Original Screenplay, because that's the award they give to quirky, weird little films, but they don't quite feel comfortable giving director or picture to just yet. The Tarantino Award, that's the one he had twice. You know what I mean? They didn't want to give Pulp Fiction Best Picture in '95. They gave it to Forrest Gump, so they gave Quentin Best Original Screenplay. But I think this is arguably the best performance I've ever seen from Cate Blanchett. She is incredible in this.
I would, for anyone who kind of wants to get an idea of a simile, I would say the closest simile you're going to get is J.K. Simmons in Whiplash.
Good call. Yeah, great call. And it'll be interesting to see if she wins this. This will be her third Academy Award. Okay, she was one for, I think it was The Aviator, and The Aviator, one for Blue Jasmine, and this will be her third. That would equal Meryl Streep. So then you've got to come into the conversation: is Cate Blanchett the greatest living actor going around today? And that greater minds than mine will come up with an answer to that. But did you actually enjoy this?
No.
Would you recommend it?
No. I don't know who, beyond real cinephiles who want to experience something different, I don't know who would actively seek this out or who this would engage. I like this movie, but I kind of feel like it's single bloody minded, and that makes it a challenge to watch. And you said it right at the beginning. with the unusual credits, the end credits being at the beginning. I know people who would just go, "Where's the fucking movie? Fuck this," and bounce after the first 5 minutes. And they would be doing themselves a disservice because of the powerhouse performance. At the same time, there is no single storyline going through except the slow twisting of the character of Lydia just to watch her unravel. And there are many people who love that kind of thing, but I think they're all already going to be interested and invested in this movie. I don't know how I would sell this movie to someone else as a recommendation. Friend of the show, Patrick, he is purposefully stretching out and doing movies that he otherwise wouldn't do. He's, as he would say, he's a bit of a baby when it comes to horror movies, so he's been on a horror binge. This is probably not the type of movie that he would inherently enjoy, but if he wants to really stretch himself in a very different genre and style of cinema, this would be a great possibility. But it's gonna fight every second of that 2.5 hours.
That's a good point. It's probably going to be a challenge for a lot of, as I said, casual goers. I can see your point. I very much enjoyed this film, but I'm that kind of person you were just talking about, the person who will seek out amazing performances. That said, though, I think more people should see films like this and less films like Avatar. Way of the Water, which has somehow got a Best Picture nomination.
If it wins, I'm going to be so pissed.
It won't. It's charity. You made a lot of money, and we like people coming back to the cinema
again. We recognize your $2 billion. We're not going to talk about the fact that it cost you $2 billion as well.
I think it's the kind of thing people should be seeing because I think it's amazing, and I think I said the fact I had to actually stop and at the end of a film and go, "Is she a real person?" I think speaks volumes for the quality of this film, and I think it's a masterpiece. I thought it was extraordinary. I think it's got lots of different things about the corruption of power and the Me Too movement and how it can apply to both genders and what it looks like for people on the inside. And I think there are questions in here about how do you separate the art from the artist, and we'll go into that in a second, I think. But I enjoyed it very much. That I can see your point, but don't go into this expecting something that's going to be a popcorn movie, because it absolutely isn't going to be.
This is something you need to invest your time and attention into, and if you do that, you will very much be rewarded. Yeah. Now, shall we move on?
Let's just talk. We're gonna quickly do binge browse bone.
Binge browse bone. So, have you got any nominations for Binge this week?
I am going to go with the new animated series from Danny DeVito, which is available on Disney Plus yet again. Little Demon, because that's where you go for demonic cartoons. You think of Disney. And this is a new series starring himself and his daughter Lucy and Aubrey Plaza. After being impregnated by the devil, a reluctant mother and her Antichrist daughter attempt to live an ordinary life in Delaware. This is a lot of fun. This is a fantastic little animated series about, we have Aubrey Plaza playing Laura, Lucy DeVito playing Chrissy, her daughter, and Danny DeVito playing Satan. For a hookup earlier between Laura and Satan, there comes Chrissy, the daughter of the devil. She's just had her first period, which means the devil, despite that they've been running from a devil for her entire lives, the devil can now track her down and is now attempting to build a relationship with his daughter so that she can take over as the Prince of Darkness kind of thing. And it is sensational. Absolutely sensationally, hilariously funny. Really risque, really out there for Disney Plus. Like, this is not for children. And it has the best elements of Rick and Morty in the sense of anything can happen because it's animation, and the fact that Laura is a witch of herself. So, there's magic involved, and she can do whatever she needs to do to try and protect her daughter, or, get out of whatever situation she's found herself in. And it does, deal with the fairly standard issues, growing up, fitting into the new school. It doesn't help when you eviscerate two school bullies to the point where they are literally pulp dripping off the toilet walls, which is what she does in the first episode. I'd like a quick shout out to the character of Darlene, voiced by Lennon Palm, who's the drunken neighbor of Laura, who is constantly has a glass of Chardonnay in hand and is sort of very cheerfully getting involved in whatever schemes he's coming up with that particular week. I think this is the best new animated show I've seen in a very long time. Really, really digging it.
Okay. It kind of sounds a little bit like the 2007 series Reaper, which was
but it's funny.
Yeah, that was always the problem with that show.
I remember Kevin Smith was involved in that early, but it didn't get better.
Yeah,
so that's a definite binge for me.
Okay, well, I've got a browse. That is season 2 of The Legend of Vox Machina. We've had the first 3 episodes release on Prime Video after the first season came out about a year ago at this point. This one picks up where the first season left off with the Chroma Conclave, a collection of chromatic dragons unusually working together to take down the capital city of Iman. And the heroes are very quickly flung on a journey to try and gather allies and weaponry to defeat this mass evil. And the first series was very, very mixed bag of trying to be risque for risque's sake, a lot of dick jokes and sex jokes, vomit, and sort of like pushing the envelope attempts that some of them worked, most of them didn't, versus marrying up people who, like myself, have been critters for a very, very long time, and this is a bit of a dream come true project of seeing it on the screen and introducing people to the idea of D&D. That one told sort of one of the more famous storylines of the first run of the podcast / Twitch show, following the primarily focusing on Percy de Rowell's character and his relationship with the Briarwoods. This time, this story arc, it brings in a lot more opportunity to talk about each of the individual characters. So you will, and in the first 3 episodes, you do learn more about the twins, Vex and Vax. And you're starting to get little hints of some backstory for Grog, and a little bit of more than just the atypical bard of sex on legs, scam the short hold. So they have learnt their lessons from the first series, I feel, so far. It is still missing on a few very key elements and still trying to work out how to bridge the difference and the memory of what happens in the Critical Role universe versus The Legend of Vox Machina. They redesigned and retweaked some of the characters, so it's a little bit jarring sometimes, particularly the characters of Kashar and Zara. For anyone who knows who they are, I won't go into details. This is a little nod. But it's shown solid improvement, which is good. The animation is still very, very good. And the voice work is, as you'd expect from people who started off as voice actors, who did role-playing and now doing voice acting work. They should be pretty good at the characters that they created themselves.
So that's a browse on that one?
That is definitely a browse, partly because it is a weekly release thing, but at the same time, I think that it's worth having dipping your toe in.
I have a browse as well.
Ooh,
my browse is for White Lotus Season 2.
Okay.
I have not seen Season 1, I should note, but I believe and have been told that this is the kind of show that does a new thing every year. Like, so what happened in season 1 doesn't directly impact season 2. It's a completely new storyline, which is an interesting angle for a show. You don't get many shows like that anymore, which tell a completely new story of a new cast of characters. This is set in a resort, a very fancy resort in Italy, and follows the stories of a number of different groups of people who are staying in the hotel and characters who work at the hotel and around the area. Episode 1 of the season opens with a series of bodies washing up on the beach outside the hotel, and then cuts back a few weeks earlier, where we meet the characters who are staying at the hotel. And this has been a huge success. It's been written and directed by Mike White. You might know him. He wrote School of Rock, amongst other Jack Black projects.
Orange Country.
Orange County, great film. You know his face. He's an actor as well. And it's got some big names popping up here. F. Murray Abraham stars in this season. Jennifer Coolidge is making a big career step. She's been very successful in her role in this season. We've got Aubrey Plaza popping up again. Michael Imperioli, the first thing I think I've seen him in about 10 or 15 years, maybe since the end of The Sopranos. It's great to see him come back up. And I don't really understand exactly what the fuss is about this show. Like, people lose their shit about how great it is. This has a 7.8. This episode 1. The show as a whole has a fantastic rating on IMDb of 7.9. People love it. I don't get it. Nothing happens. It's a very slow burn with what's happening. I've watched 3 episodes in this season, and I'm just like, I don't hate it. Like, it's not boring per se, but it's like basically it's a soap opera with a big budget and a nice location. There are very slow-moving plots with different groups of people who are doing different things, but we're no closer to figuring out how all these bodies end up washing up on the beach after 3 episodes. And I'm a little bit frustrated about it. There are only 7, I think, in this season. So
halfway, still no questions answered. Okay.
And there's still nothing's been. I think I can pick what's going to happen. I mean, there's Aubrey Plaza and her husband are there, and they're staying next door to his business partner, her wife, and the Aubrey Plaza's character really hates his business partner who's staying next door, but you're never going to end up fucking. And it's like you're telegraphing that punch a mile away. But I'm not saying I will never watch it again. I might come back to it and work for another couple episodes to see if I can, figure out why people love it so much. I'm just curious. So, like, if I keep watching, maybe it'll start to make sense. But for now, it's a browse for me. Pick it up if you really like nice locations. I heard a rumor that season 3 will be shot here in Australia.
Okay. It'll probably be doubling up as somewhere in America, but it's fine.
It's very. I think the first season was somewhere else. The first season wasn't shot in Italy as well. I think it's like they shoot it. It's designed to be that the White Lotus is a chain of resorts around the world, so it could be a fancy resort in Queensland. That's what I heard.
All right. Okay. Don't have anything else that I've been really watching or able to talk about at this point, so I'm gonna finish my conversations there unless you've got anything else.
I am gonna come back next week, episode 3. I think probably I'm gonna have a slightly more detailed binge browse bone covering The Last of Us. I really want to give it 3 episodes to really be able to come back to you. Maybe I might take 2 minutes instead of 1, but I think people are interested to hear about that one. So come back next week and you can get some thoughts on the first 3 episodes of that. And other than that, we have got a couple of minutes before. We're doing pretty well with time, but I would like just to get your quick thoughts on the Justin Roiland situation that came out today. He has parted ways with Comedy Central. He will no longer be involved in voicing the characters of Rick and Morty.
So the person who does the voices of Rick and Morty is exiting a show called Rick and Morty. So they're recasting Rick and Morty?
That's what the word in the street is. They're going to recast.
I guess there is the opportunity, considering of the multiversal comedy that they've had in the past, they can just it's so self-referential that they can even just take the piss out of it and so like, oh, your voice seems different. So like, yeah, well, so does yours. And just awkward silence and move on. They could definitely do it. I don't know if it's going to continue to be the success that it generally has been. Both of us, we had some questions about the quality of the
last season was good though. Season 6 I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, but the season before it had some very shaky legs.
Interestingly, I believe Roiland has been uninvolved in the creative side of a show since about season 4. So from that side of things,
interesting.
What I've read, but
yeah.
I'm with you. Like, I think the only thing, I think that what they do have is you said that multiversal comedy. They can not only wink at the audience, but also go, "Oh, this is Rick and Morty from C124," and they sound a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm like you. I just kind of wonder how, you're going to be going in going, sound the same. They're going to be a little bit different, and I don't know. I mean, I just don't know how that's going to work. I will give it a go, and considering everything, the stuff that's coming out about what he's been involved in, allegedly, on Twitter, and if you believe what you read on Twitter, and the stuff he's been charged with, he has actually been charged with felony domestic violence in the United States and false imprisonment. So if that turns out to be correct, then and I would suspect maybe Comedy Central know more about it than everybody else. Like, well, I mean, it's a good call on their behalf. I can't disagree with it, and I can't also. It works a lot of fucking money for them, so I can't see. Of course you're going to keep trying to do it, but
Exactly. I can fully understand every single step that they have taken in this regard. It would be like, if George Lucas was suddenly revealed to be a pedophile, for example. It's like, oh, no, removal of all Star Wars stuff. They're like, no, it's worth too much money.
And he's not directly involved. Maybe it'd be a bit like, I don't know, what's the biggest thing on TV these days?
The Last of Us.
Maybe, sorry?
The Last of Us.
Maybe, or maybe Kevin Feige got revealed as being somebody who'd done some nasty shit, what do you do with your Marvel shit? You got to leave his name on it, I think, but
Yeah. But
I
get it, and I think they're making the right choice on every level. It's not good to support in any way, shape, or form people who do such heinous things as what are being alleged for Justin Roiland. So definitely not support that. They have to, especially following the Me Too movement. It would be a massive, even bigger problem for them if they said, "Oh no, we're going to support the creators." That would just be the perfectly worst thing for them to do. So divorcing. The only thing that I can talk about is my curiosity of how the product of Rick and Morty will continue. And, he has been so damn busy with it, so much other stuff. It makes sense what you say about him not really being involved in the show's creation for a few seasons because he's been doing video game and
I just downloaded the video game the other day and I was looking forward to playing it. And now I'm like, I don't know if I can.
It's like every now and then we get people trade in games, and there was Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare, I think it was, or Advanced Warfare. That one's got Kevin Spacey in it, and it's like, oh boy,
I can give you half a pack of twisties for this, mate.
Yeah, it's like his face is right on the back cover. I just nah.
Well, I mean, we'll wait and see on that one, but that was a little piece of gossip for today. Have you got anything else, or should we let people? We might get in under an hour 40.
No, I've got nothing that's on my mind right now. So let's get it at 140. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week on Armchair Producers. You have seen the sunset behind me. We have been talking about our chain movie of the week, Awakenings, following on from last week's Beat Street, care of Mary Alice. We talked about White Noise on Netflix, Avatar, which is currently doing the circuits, for fantastic applause for Kate Blanchett's performance in that one. We had our now regular spot of Binge Browse Bone, and we talked a little bit about the Justin Roiland's fuck up, should we say. But next week, we are going to be talking about
After Hours.
After Hours, the Martin Scorsese directed movie. And Travis,
we might even, George has teed up one for me. I'm going to try and get around to watching Devotion this week, which is on Netflix. Jonathan Major's fighter pilot film. And I think we're going to try and organize for you to see the Banshees of Inisherin this week.
Yes.
And then so that will be hopefully what we have to present for you next week.
Yeah, and if anything else comes up of monumental importance, of course, we will talk about it as soon as we can. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, at The Fried Brain, at Evil Trav, twitch.tv/The Fried Brain. No, twitch.tv/Armchair Producers.
That one.
Yes, that's the one. And if you have recommendations for movies for us to watch, please let us know in any of the comments on any of those platforms. We do read them, we do listen, and we only block people who say, hey, do you want more subscribers? We are very happy with our Russian bots. Thank you very much. And government officials who check to see whether or not we should be on some kind of watch list.
And the answer to that is yes.
Definitely. We are fantastic white noise. Ooh, tying it together again. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.